Dark and Savage Show podcast. I am your host, John Burke, with my friend Domminick Izzo here to discuss what's currently going on with the Uvalde shootings, all the updates we've been getting out there. What's going on, Domminick? Thanks for being here today, brother.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. This is long overdue. I've been following you for years.
Well, you and I've we've kind of bounced back and forth on social media. I want to do an introduction for you. Go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience so they know, number one, where to find you, who you are, and what your background is.
So my name's Domminick Izzo. I'm from the Chicago area. I'm a retired police officer, radio show host, cigar entrepreneur, and a guy who shoots his mouth off. You can follow me anywhere on social media. That's Domminick with a K and then Izzo. That's the 360-degree view of who I am and all that stuff. But there's been many paths outside of that.
Well, where can they find you on social media before we get started? Because I don't want to forget that.
The easiest way I've been using a lot more lately is Instagram. Domminick, M-I-N-I-C-k, Izzo, Izzo. That's it. The only page I got until they take me down.
Okay, yeah, I'm worried about mine getting freaking. We were talking right before the show. I literally was responding to a comment and I typed in the word bitch, and within 30 seconds they removed it and said bullying and harassment. They didn't even care about the context. It's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous the way it's become now. It's gone off the realm of common sense to just it's insane.
Could you imagine the first video that you did years ago that got you viral?
Oh God, yeah.
Could you imagine if that was out today?
No, fuck no. They'd pull me in a heartbeat.
Oh, it wouldn't last. And for those who never saw it, it was motivational, inspirational. John blew up huge and really attacking lazy people. Yeah. And it was massive. You could not run that today.
That's just where we're at now. That's where we're at. Hopefully, I don't see it changing anytime soon. It's only getting worse and worse and worse. But that's why people are seeking out other platforms. I've been on Truth Social. It's hard to grow over there because unless you're in the GOP in crowd, you're not really going to get develop a good following unless you're getting shout outs from the big names over there. It's just it's gotten to the point now where it's eventually when they do pull me off social media, I think I'm going to be done with it. I'm over it.
As you lasted this long, and I think about that all the time. It's at what point? I had a pretty big Facebook page years ago, about 100,000 people follow me. That's when I had my officer Domminick page, and I used to think forever because social media kind of gave you that status of having a voice, right? Mm-hmm. And they were at risk for pulling me. I had 22 30-day bans in a row for that crap, and then 2 years ago, all of a sudden, it's your page is unpublished. And if it was 3-4 years ago, I would have been shitting my pants. But now it's when they deleted that, I was I don't care.
Yeah, they literally just did the same thing to me. I had about 600K over there. They throttled my reach. The page was worthless for a year or two, and then they finally just said your page has been unpublished due to terms of service violations. It's for what? Because I was streaming the podcast live over there, and we were talking about trans issues and stuff like that. God forbid you talk about anything trans, anything that goes against the current narrative regarding transgender people. Well, then no, we can't hear that. That's hate speech. We have to shut it off. We cannot have dissenting opinions. We cannot disagree. And that's why I've just felt like social media has just become cancer to our society. It's no longer having reasonable, rational discussions. Now it's just literally who can shout down the other one and name call. It's I'm just over because I control with the best of them. But it's when an actual discussion can come about, they're not about it. They don't want to have it.
I like that trolling stuff until you feel like you're just as filthy. I for a while I was playing their game, and every person who would come in, I would either be very blatantly patronistic, condescending, this and that, because that was my humor, right? See if they pick it up. But after a while, you have no substance, anything.
Yeah.
I'm just it's worthless, and I was losing. Yeah. So it's a lose on all levels. I hate it.
No, it really is. Well, let's just jump straight into it. Then the Uvalde shooting. New evidence has now come out. This is what I love about social media. All the armchair quarterbacks that literally have been saying from the get-go, this is what happened. These officers are cowards, yada, yada, yada. Well, now people are conflating, saying, wait a minute, we need due process. We need an investigation because, as you know as an officer, when the MSM is going to report something regarding an active shooter or anything like that, the first report is always wrong. They always get it wrong. And people took that and they ran with it. Where do you stand on this right now?
I'm going to give my background a little bit to give.
Go ahead.
I should talk on this. So I became a police officer in March of 2001, and then October of 2019, I pulled the plug. I'll even plug my book because I've got all of my references in there. Right? It's called Before the Badge. You can get it on Amazon. Patrol is as high as I went. I never tested for sergeant, never wanted to do it. Defensive tactics expert, certified use of force instructor, field training officer, juvenile officer. Our version of SWAT in Illinois is called NIPUS, Northern Illinois Police Alarm Systems. I was on their mobile field force team. I was the entry guy in the stick for our no-knock warrant service when we had that. So I've done my fair share. The area I worked in was caught between Chicago and Milwaukee. So we got all of the garbage that left those two areas and came by us.
That's a hot zone. That's no joke. That's a hot zone.
It was. My uncle was a lieutenant at the Cabrini Green firehouse in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And he laughed at me when I first tested and I went up that area. He goes, "What are you going up there for?" I'm like, "Well, it was I'm an anomaly." I sat there and I filled out an application. 4 weeks later, after the first application, they offered me a job, and I went, "I'll take it," because I've heard the horror stories about guys, testing 20 times, never getting on. Well, it turns out when they knocked down Cabrini Green, if anybody ever knows what that is, they moved up north to Lake County. So I've done my fair share of work. I want all the information to come out from Uvalde before I make a decision, because
hold it. Wait a minute. Wait, you mean you're not going to emotionally jump the gun and armchair quarterback what woulda, coulda, shoulda? Oh,
I do that enough. Now, number one, I don't bootlick. Because the one thing that really pisses me off is when people sit there and they're like, "Oh, you're bootlicking these cops," and I'm like, rewind last year when I'm calling police domestic terrorists for enforcing these mask mandates.
Yep,
I'm one of the few, to my knowledge, social media people who condemned Derek Chauvin and didn't change his view on it. So to this day, I think that Derek Chauvin was unbelievably evil. So my balance does not coexist with what law enforcement is supposed to do and then doing their jobs. So I wasn't in the room. I wasn't in the school. I didn't see it. I keep hearing, I'm going to plug this for those who haven't seen your podcast. The podcast, was it a day or two after, with the two officers who were on? That had me riveted. And I normally don't get invested into shows. I could not believe, all three of you, how unbelievable that podcast was. So number one, I'm gonna give you on-air props for that. You guys broke it down. I don't think anybody should really need any more information outside of that episode. But when it comes down to that, now I want to hear more, right? Because we 40 minutes, they didn't do anything. That was debunked. That was debunked on your show, was debunked everywhere else. Now it's, well, they're inside, they didn't do anything, and I would have done this, I would have done this. I kind of want to go a weird direction and say, you were military. And what years did you serve?
Say again?
What years did you serve?
2001 to 2016.
Okay, long damn. So you and I are a cop and military at the same time. You think that the quality of United States Navy, Air Force, Marine soldier has gone downhill since you left a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Because it sure as shit didn't in law enforcement. People want order followers. People are creating these very soft men and women. It took 3 cops to replace me when I left my department. One of them was a woman who was like 5'1". People could Google Round Lake Park Police in Illinois. One of their cops just last week got disarmed with their taser, and their taser used against them.
Saw that, yeah.
Yeah, that's my department. So you got these people in there that are looking to follow orders. The entirety of the media and public want cops to be just completely transparent, all this shit. You really think that on some point that these cops are not going to follow orders? I'm waiting for somebody from the mainstream media to get all this information from this McCraw and everybody else and say, okay, you said it was a failure. You said it was abject failure. Mr. McCraw, should the police have disobeyed the commander's orders? I want to know why that question is being asked.
It's not going to be asked because nobody's focusing on that right now. Because right now, everyone, even in the comments on YouTube, is like, it wasn't debunked. Yes, it was. There was so much that was debunked because the AP initially reported that the cops initially did not even go in. They reported, then they changed to no, 3 cops did go in. Then 2 cops got shot through the wall. They had to pull it out, and then they didn't go back in. That was debunked. Then they said the BORTAC officer showed up and made breach by himself. That was a lie. He didn't make breach by himself. Then when the investigation is actually going down in Austin, and you're seeing the doors being brought in, and you're seeing the actual testimony and the interviews of the officers officer saying, oh, by the way, they didn't even test the handle to see if it was open. Well, then that changes everything. So what people are doing right now is they're armchair quarterbacks saying like, oh, we got it right from the get-go. You guessed right. You guessed right, and you allowed no due process to happen. And it's not that people are saying that, we're going to believe all officers. It'd be the same as saying believe all women, but we're saying there should be due process. There should be an investigation. You owe it to them because some of those officers had kids in that school. And people want to sit there and they just want to armchair quote, parents were running in there, blah, blah, blah. They even detained one person running it. Yeah, because you could get shot. You could 100% get shot. So it's everybody sitting there thinking with their emotions, thinking with their feelers, because, by and large, dead children is nothing that is going to make anybody feel good about. They're going to be very angry, and justifiably so. But for fuck's sakes, no one wanted to sit there and use due process. So in that podcast we did, it was literally the reports by the AP, a timeline breakdown saying this is what happened, this is what happened. And so we're saying, and I even said in the podcast, if new evidence surfaces, we reserve the right to change our mind. And I have changed my mind. I am here saying the officers were wrong, but the officer also were following orders to the police chief, Arredondo, who basically, from what it sounds like, was a coward. Basically saying
that's the problem that I want. When people are lumping in the police are cowards, I want to know who they're referring to. You want to talk about the chief, the commander? Fine. I'm going to back up those guys who are ready to go in. What direction were they given? What orders were they given? Until I hear testimony from them, I'm not backing down off defending those guys. You guys said it on your podcast where you see cowardice in like ones and twos. You don't see cowardice in
exactly. Yeah.
So I want to know, because I've been in those situations, and I think that night at your podcast, I did like 20 post stories on social media on my Instagram story where I'm like, in this year, I vividly remember we had a shooting 2 blocks away. Officer says, shots fired. And my commander right there says, we're not going, stay here. So what am I supposed to do? Go and sit there and respond? Or then, and people don't get this either. When you have this, you just go in, you go in. Okay, so we're going to do this. We're going to play devil's advocate. One cop in there decides to play hero. He says, fuck Commander so-and-so. I'm going in. They go in, and the guy's laying dead on the floor because it's been quiet for 40 minutes and they haven't heard anything. Now he disobeys orders. He loses his job. He loses his pension. He loses that goes everywhere. Now he can't pay for his kids. His wife leaves him, all this shit, right? You don't think these things are going through these guys' mind? When they're in the hallway, I had some box on my timeline yesterday going, they should have gone in based on what they heard.
They didn't hear anything.
Do we know what they heard?
Yeah.
People think truly that they heard kids being screaming and being murdered for 50, 60 minutes, and the cops just stood there. That's what these people think. I highly doubt a sound was made, which is why you can't move, and it turns into a barricaded subject.
Yeah.
People don't get this.
Well, it's one of those things that was discussed on the podcast that goes from active shooter situation to barricaded shooter situation. And all the veterans out there saying woulda, coulda, shoulda. What they also fail to understand is that the veteran tactics and TTPs we utilize are not the same as law enforcement. They are completely different. So they sit in there saying, well, you know what we did in Iraq and Afghanistan? What we did in Iraq and Afghanistan would never fly stateside, would never fly.
How often did you train those tactics?
For what?
For breaching an entry and clearing a building.
All the time.
Ask me, with my department, how many active school shooting training scenarios we've ever done.
How many?
1.
So lack of training.
Yeah. I was 26 years old is when we did it. So people are going to sit there and they're also going to say, it's like, you're trying to justify these officers as far as saying they were just following orders. That's not what's happening here. But people in these comment stuff, they want to hear what they want to hear because they're so emotionally charged. They're going to accuse you of being a bootlicker no matter what, and simply saying, all I'm wanting is due process. Now with the evidence actually coming to light, it's like, no, I agree. They were wrong. They were wrong. The police chief was wrong, yada, yada. But nobody knew that from the get-go. It was all distorted information. There were lies nonstop. So the very same people that want to sit there and pound the drum as far as like, don't believe the MSM. The MSM is liars, blah, 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 blah. Well, suddenly an active shooting occurs and there's children dead. And now we swallow hook, line, and sinker what the MSM is going to push. And they even retracted story after story after story. So all these people in the comments and shit like that
all they're doing is grandstanding on what they think they know, and how some people like, says don't armchair quarterback proceeds to do just that off of the facts that were reported, you dumb fuck, not the MSM, off the facts that were reported. But these people are so stupid. You're never going to reason with them. They're honestly, I have no respect for these idiots because they sit there and do the exact same thing the liberal left does. And it's like, look, I'm just saying, give me due process. They deserve an investigation just like everybody else. But because it's cops and they just by and large hate cops, no, fuck them. Okay, well, if that was you in a different scenario, you'd be singing a different tune. The hypocrites, the hypocrisy is just beyond me.
I want to know where the blue lives matter, the people who are ultra blue lives, right? Who post all the time, blue lives matter. Why aren't they supporting the basic patrol, the responders? Again, I'm with you. I hate command staff. Command staff is the root of all evil in law enforcement. You've got a bunch of men and women who don't know what the hell they're doing anymore, and they're leading these do your job like we tell you, or you're gone, men and women into battle. And these guys aren't even trained for battle. I have a friend who's in the media that says that the news media does this stuff on purpose. Where they report it knowing that they're going to have to print a retraction, but it doesn't matter because they already got it out there in the
Exactly. CNN did the same thing with the Steele dossier. This happens so much in the MSM. It's ridiculous, but people still believe it. They still buy into it because there's a lot of hatred for cops right now, and justifiably so. I get it as far as the two. And that's why I had on Twitter some guys like, how you loving that love all cops narrative now? It's like, have you been absent the last 2 years when I was sitting here saying they were tyrants behind a badge, shutting down businesses, they were fucking wrong, and they deserve whatever fate became them? It's just amazing to me how selective people's hearing is. It's like, oh, well then I'm just going to lump John in and say, like, okay, I see what it is now. People just don't want to actually have any kind of critical thinking or have a critical thinking say, hey, wait a minute, guys. This is an investigation. Let this unfold because we could have this wrong and we could potentially be demonizing innocent officers that we're actually doing the right thing. It's not backing the blue. That's saying that's justice. That's due process. The same thing should apply to anything out there. But no, absolutely not. If it's cops, fuck them. Doesn't matter. All right, fair enough. See where that train of thought gets you.
That's where we are. It is no longer a knee-jerk reaction. It's just reaction. That's what people do now. And I talked about this yesterday. Is people want to be right.
Yeah,
they want to
exactly.
Be right.
Yes.
And you saw it. I can't tell you how many DMs I get from people who, like, I had like 4 or 5 people yesterday just send me just random articles, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you're doing. I get it. What do you want from this? And the one guy that I posted up there, he wasn't solely out him, but fuck these cops' lives, this and that. And I'm like, dude, you got a business, right? Public page, post your comment up there.
Yeah.
And you will never see people that post in your comment section, my comment section, their true things, and then post it up where they can lose business.
No, absolutely. Or follower. No, absolutely not.
Does not happen.
Go ahead.
I want to see these influencers because I went to go look at it. One of them was David Harris Jr. I'm not attacking him so much as I am attacking him. He posted up, these cops were cowards and this and that, and he's got millions of followers, right? Now, because you made that knee-jerk reaction and you're an influencer, now all of a sudden you got all these cops, fuck the police, this and that. How many people you doxed or followed up or found out who the Uvalde cops were, death threats, all this because of your favorite influencer making a statement who doesn't come back out and say, you know what? I commented based it off of emotion. I didn't like the fact that kids were killed. I shouldn't have said that. We need to wait for due process. Yeah. So also social media influencers who are not responsible.
Oh, absolutely. And I see a lot of that, the blue checks out there, because they want to sit there and say, well, this is what happened. This is bullshit. The officers are cowards. It's like, but wait. Every single person, dude, every single person in my DMs, same thing, sending me articles. What about this? That's MSM. Where's your source? Where's your who's the source? Well, they had somebody on the ground saying this. Who said this? Where were they? Nobody wants clarification. They just want to take a statement by a random passerby and run with it and say, this is factual. Which, okay, if that's the method you want to play, then we believe all the whammons, right? No. But when we take this train of thought and say we don't generalize, but when it comes to cops, we sure as hell can, it's flawed thinking from the get-go. But just like you said, people will send you every report under the sun. It's like, dude, that's from MSNBC. Do you know how much shit they get wrong on a daily fucking basis? And it's not saying I'm taking the cop side. I'm saying both situations, both sides, we don't know. But these blue check influencers, they don't fucking know either. It's like, oh, I didn't realize that all of them, the way you just quoted, had a crystal ball. Who's your source? Who's your inside information? Tulsi Gabbard, Dan Crenshaw, same thing. Who's your source? Yeah. Who told you? How do you know? Did you get a direct report from the officer? Like, what's going on here? Who's your source? But instead, it turns into virtue signaling. Let's get up there, play the world's smallest violin. Like, oh, this is horrible, blah, 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 blah. How do you know? And it's not picking a side. It's saying, how do you know what the facts are? The truth is what we should be going for here. And if there's no truth, you need to reserve judgment. But no, we can't do that, because if we do, well, then we're automatically taking the cop's side. That's not the case at all. And there's so many people out there that just don't see that.
But aren't we supposed to a little bit, because due process, you're innocent until proven guilty?
That's what I thought.
I thought that how it is. I told you I'm sticking with those guys who were ready to go in and were given orders, because you know damn well, I highly, highly, highly doubt they were cowards. I would bet anything they were pissed more than anything. And for 40, 50 minutes, they're like, why the fuck are we waiting? 100%. So now they got to live with it. And they got to sit there and put their heads down, since the people like Matthew McConaughey got to go to the White House and talk about it. Those guys' lives are over. Yeah. They will always be branded, no matter if this comes out and says, you know what, 5 officers were ready to go in. It doesn't matter what it is. They're always going to be cowards, according to this mass crony think, which is unbelievably destructive. And the only thing I can say, to be honest, is whenever you have something like this, I keep telling. I think the greatest thing I ever respond back was, I hope it happens to you someday. I really do. I hope that you're in a situation, and I don't know, your son wakes up one morning and decides he wants to chop his cock off and then go to the local school and start shooting it up. And then, you know what? I kind of hope that the cops sit there and say, we're not waiting like Uvalde. We're driving our fucking bus through the school, and we're running over your little mascara wearing boy. And then you go, why didn't you wait? That's where I'm at right now. I'm wishing people that, should happen.
I think right now, for me, the focal point is they were saying that according to the alert training that these officers received, apparently an alert doctrine, I have to pull this up from my friend that sent this to me, is that alert doctrine stipulates that you don't test the door handle for breaching. And I'm like, wait, what? So that's the thing that I'm confused about Orodondo right there, like doing this it seems like a chase to find a key apparently the door was open. In the investigation that just came out yesterday in the Austin, they said that on camera, and the officers admitted in an interview, no one tested the door handle. Why is that? Like, for me, my training was always the first thing you're doing is you're checking for booby traps and you're testing for.
Again, let's talk about that. There's law enforcement training. There's military training. Yeah. I'm going to tell you too. I hate training cops. Defensive tactics. Same time we did cops, because cops love to fuck around. They love to come in there. They love to show you what they know versus what they want to teach. We had my first department. We had 6 Marines. Those are the guys who took the shit seriously, to the point where the rest of us were like, dude, would you calm the fuck down? So law enforcement doesn't take things seriously. So again, I'm not licking boots. I'm saying that I can understand what the mindset of some of these guys. Who's ever in there, the one thing that I could think of is, remember, you also have command staff. Command staff is calling the shots. I don't put it past somebody from their SWAT team coming up, taking over tactically and saying, did you test the door handle? And the commander goes, yeah, we did. Because they already lied about what they did. So I did not put it past these people to say, yeah, we did. But then again, too, I don't know what SWAT team where they were from. I don't know if it was their county agency, their state agency. I don't know what the chain it was taking it over, or if they allow the Uvalde police to continue to get command. But again, it's so easy, because you've seen, if people knew how frequently command staff lies and how corrupt they are, they'd back off a little bit.
Well, I think they're certainly getting a taste of it right now, because even DPS had to backtrack on some stuff they were putting out there, because leadership was running their mouth without actually having all the facts, and people were taking that as factual. It's like, that's actually incorrect. You're not interviewing these officers. You don't know for a fact. You're making these statements and you're not sure. So honestly, a lot of leadership did a lot of damage to their own department by opening and running their mouths. It's like, maybe you should have shut up until after the investigation, because right now it's just like the press, the social media Roman mob was screaming for blood. Like, they want anything. And what you just gave them basically condemned your officers before due process even occurred. So it's like, I get why people are pissed off, because when the DPS chief comes out there and says, yeah, we kind of blah, blah, blah. It's like, maybe you shouldn't have said that. Maybe you should have said, wait a minute, we're going to have an investigation.
Yeah, he fucked that thing up. It was an abject failure.
Yeah. ...
On whose part?
Yeah,
now, I know
exactly.
I think talk about the chief and the command staff, but again, I want to take this burden off of the patrol, because they're damned if they do, damned if they don't. We don't know. We don't know if this kid had some makeshift pipe bomb on him. Walk in the door, or the second they hear the door, he lights it. All of a sudden, every kid in the room dies. You have no idea what the circumstances were. And until I get that information, until I hear, from some guy who's turned on a stick, ready to go in and says, dude, we sat there, we were ready. Commander so-and-so ordered us not to do it. We didn't hear a peep for 50, 60 minutes.
And that's been verified by facts as well, because they said the initial murders trigger warning for everybody out there. The initial murders of the children happened when that kid first went in there. Like he killed them all already. And then officers were outside the door. They basically isolate him, and then it turned into a breaching situation. And they finally just released the pictures of that classroom and the windows that were there.
Right.
Good luck. Everybody's like, why didn't you go through the window? You would have gotten shot. Like, it would have been impossible. Like, to open that motherfucker up would have been impossible.
It looks like an older school too. If that's the case, it doesn't make
from a tactical standpoint, like just trying to sit there and look through, they were hard to see through. And number one, if you're going to try and make breach through there, it wasn't, because it was like the window was like about 4 or 5 feet off the ground.
So you got to be level with that, and then you can't do that. Now I understand that tactic too. If the kid goes in and he starts shooting, he's annihilating everybody in there. So the correct call, if that's the case, if 3 officers go in, they're shot at, they pull back, and they give any information and assess it, and then you don't hear anything. Yeah, tactically, I'm gonna tell you the one thing too that commander's thinking the entire time: liability.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Command staff is not. Do you remember these people are sitting behind desks? They don't work the road. They're not thinking, how can I do X, Y? They're thinking, how can I prevent getting sued? Yeah. That's all they're thinking. That's
a shame it comes down to that too, because I've heard that before, as far as like when you're making a tactical entry, like with a shotgun, for example, and one of those BBs hauls off and hits somebody on the inside, you're getting sued. Which it's insane that that's even a factor at this point, but apparently it is.
Well, you remember the movie SWAT with Colin Farrell?
It's been a while.
Yeah, Colin Farrell, the opening scene, they go into the bank, and Jeremy Renner winds up taking out the bad guy because he shoots the woman through the shoulder, chest area to tag him, and he loses his job, right? Well, when you think about it, that's a tactically sound maneuver. Yeah, she's going to maybe lose the use of her arm, but they wiped out the bad guy. Same thing. Why didn't they just go in? They go in, they turn that knob, and the guy on the inside hears the knob turning, and all of a sudden he's got 30 hostages. He lights them all up. Then what? It's a no win. And again, this is law enforcement. Military, I would like to think the military would be like, we're just going to plow this fucker over now.
That's what the military probably would do, yeah.
That's how I want my military. I want my military to be a ruthless organization, which is why these military, then I got to do this one too. And this is no disrespect to you, because I hear you says, but the military needs to stay in their fucking lane when it comes down to law enforcement tactics.
Yeah, it's 2 different worlds, yeah.
We cannot do what we want to do. It's as simple as that. So all these Call of Duty and retired guys are out there. I would have done it. You got to go after the threat and breach and kick some ass. Dude, fucking your glory days are over. Let it go.
Yeah, because what you brought up was a very good point, because Pete, that was on the podcast, also brought that up as far as liability, to where if you make the wrong call, if somebody, innocent person, gets clipped, you're done. It's just, these are things these officers are considering. Now, I'm not by any means justifying them not going in because of that, but these are all factors that are running through their heads. But to me, I think as more information comes out, I think the focal point is going to be Arredondo, I believe his name is, did not give them the go-ahead. He was clearly wrong. Then it's going to go into, were the officers wrong for obeying a lawful order, or were they wrong for not disobeying a lawful order?
No, I think they're safe, because again, too, that time, at what point when you go in and shots are fired to where shots are no longer fired, what point do you change the status from active shooter to barricaded subject?
Right. And there are different procedures for a barricaded subject than there is an active shooter, correct?
100%.
Because I had people sending me articles. They said the current training is you remove whatever's taking life immediately. Well, when they got there, there were no longer shots, so they didn't know.
If I pull up on the streets and you're lighting up a daycare, and you're got a flamethrower and you're burning every little toddler in there, right? I pull up on the street, you just murdered 30 kids, and as I put up and as I come down, it's on scene. Literally, I see you doing this. You put the flamethrower down and put your hands up in the air. Can I shoot you?
No. Same,
Why not?
Yeah. Disarmed. You're unarmed.
People don't get this shit. So at what point does the line become active shooter into barricaded subject? And that's the problem. The people are just they're letting their emotions rule this, which 100% I'm fine with that. Don't condemn the guys who are ready to go into war for this without hearing what they went through. That's my biggest argument with this, and I'm not backing down from it.
I can understand that. It makes sense to me. And it's just like I said, the more that we get more information and things like that, it's like everyone is making these shot calls knowing now with the information becoming available. But yet back a week or two ago, they didn't know. Nobody knew this information. All they had was speculation. Rob O'Neill, Navy SEALs, like, why don't you just mule kick the door? It's an outward facing swinging door set against a steel frame. Come to find out later, the door was also unlocked. So things keep changing. Mm-hmm. And all I'm sitting here saying this entire time is like, let's just have an investigation. Reason for it is due process, because if those officers were doing the right thing, they deserve that due process. Anyone that does the right, even if it was military, they deserve due process. But suddenly we're against this. The same party of facts and logic, all these influencers about facts and logic, what's weight, the same ones in these video guns or these shootings of cops like killing unarmed black people, yada, yada. Let's see the whole video. Let's see the investigation. Well, suddenly the script flips and like, oh no, let's condemn them now. Because why? We want clicks. We want a grandstand on this. We want to build our following. We want clout. We want all this stuff. And like people like me are saying, wait a minute, there's something off about this. There's something that we're not getting all the facts, and I certainly don't trust the MSM. So I want to know what the actual outcome of the investigation is. And then people are like, so you trust the government to investigate. What other alternative do we have at this point? Like, I'm all ears for that.
Anarchy is the only other aspect, because if somebody had asked McCraw, okay, this is an abject failure, should the officers have disobeyed orders? Now all of a sudden you're giving cops nationwide permission to disobey orders.
That's a very slippery slope, and people don't understand that. They're looking at the here and now of like they should have disobeyed orders. So now a cop has the right to disobey any order that he or she personally does not agree with. Now you got anarchy in the ranks. That is not a good thing, because if that was in the military, fuck me running. I can't even imagine a private saying, you know what, Sergeant, I'm not doing that. Fuck that. We're going in. Dude, I would yank that motherfucker up by the scruff of his neck like you endangered this entire team. But people don't see that from a tactical aspect. Instead, it's just like, well, the feelers. Like, okay, fair enough. Let's see how far that gets you.
19 guys waiting to go in and 3 or 4 say, fuck this. They're endangering the rest of the team. Yeah. If this goes back all the way to Chauvin with those 2 probation officers looking at Chauvin kneeling on the guy's neck for 9 minutes. And my position for that is, I don't think that Chauvin killed him, but what he did was worse. You actually punished a black man with an insulting position for 9 minutes. Why did those 2 new guys not pull Chauvin off? Because they were following orders.
Yeah. It's a very slippery slope, because now it's kind of like the individual officers are going to answer for the leadership's call. The leadership should answer for the call. But at some point, though, we do have to ask. So, for example, this is where like the catch-22 is. What about officers that are just following orders, enforcing these tyrannical lockdowns? So it's like, I get that side of it too. So like for me, it's like, what's constitutionally protected and what's not? What's actual bound by the Constitution and what is not? So it's like, it's a very slippery slope there. And I don't think people are going to have these conversations and go as in depth. It's just simply a cosmetic feel good. Fuck those cops, fuck the police. They're all cowards, yada, yada, yada. And in some cases they could be right. But at the same token, I want all the information. I want all the facts before I pass my own judgment. And according to what it says right now, they were wrong. The leadership was wrong. They didn't even try the fucking door. But at that point, people are saying like, alert, that's their TTPs. That's their SOP on how to make breach. It's like, I don't think that's a smart way, because then you wouldn't have been trying to hunt down a key for 40 minutes. You could have made breach. But here's the other fucked up part. Even if they had tried the door, here's where it gets weird. The kids were already dead.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that goes back to, again, now, my mind works differently, because I've worked with idiots. I've worked with some amazing cops, some fucking guys I would go to war with any day of the week and twice on Sunday. And then as time went on, we saw these really shitty fucking hires going, you're hiring because they want order takers. People will get it. They want order takers. That being said, I want to know what these cops' backgrounds are. I want to look at, everything from physical fitness proficiency, which doesn't exist, does not exist in law enforcement. If you guys have any idea how many times departments have tried to sue their departments, cops have said, you're not putting a physical fitness proficiency in. It's unconstitutional. It's against our union. I want to know their discipline records. I want their training records. I want to know their age, their experience. People don't get, this is what you wanted with law enforcement. You got some 22-year-old college graduate who says, I'm going to do this and do this job, and they get interviewed and they pass well and all this. And then you get this active shooter scenario that they all go training for. Then it happens in real life. These men and women are not warriors. A lot of them are not warriors. But again, now I'm insulting the same police I'm trying to support, but this is how my mind thinks. I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt, but I know potentially what could be behind all that information.
It seems like the investigation is still going on today. I've got an article right here from the Texas Senate resumes Uvalde hearing that mayor calls Bozo the Clown Show. What is this helping? Like, what is this really? The mayor say, what is this helping?
Every cop in that department honestly should do shit until the mayor or anyone else says we're supporting our officers until we find out what comes. I wish for 1 minute that I could have the microphone to the world and talk about police command. It's never going to be your frontline officer, because the cops want to take care of themselves. They do want to beat the shit out of that moron who fucks things up for them on the street. There's a ton of bad apples out there, and they would be taken care of by their own if they were allowed to. The command staff in almost every single situation I've ever seen that's gone wrong is the epitome of the problem. I have seen false confessions. I've seen false charges. I've all from command staff screwing things up. And you know what? There's zero consequences for law enforcement. But when it comes down to the patrol officer, those are the ones that are getting fired and shit canned and saying, hey, resign or we're going to fire you, but you can go to a different department. It's never the ones that call the shots. Instead, they're glorified like crazy. And now they do conferences and let's talk about this shit. I fucking hate police command staff. They're the root of all evil.
It seems like it's one of those things that you're cutting the tail off the snake versus the head. Because again, if Arredondo was wrong on this, he's already taken leave of absence. He's probably going to wind up getting fired. It looks like it's looking really bad for him. But right now, the article says a Texas Senate committee examined the Uvalde shooting. Will hold its second day of testimony Wednesday. The first day of hearings provided bombshell testimony from the Texas Department of Public Safety Director Steve McCraw. McCraw gave the most detailed public account of the shooting thus far, confirming troubling details about the police response and a minute-by-minute account of the 77 minutes before police finally confronted the shooter. Now it's 77 minutes. That changed. The latest alarming revelation was that the door to the classroom where the 18-year-old shooter remained was unlocked and that no law enforcement officer had tried to open the door while Arredondo continued to call for keys to the classroom. 19 children and 2 teachers were killed. 17 others were injured. Wednesday's meeting is expected to focus on mental health and firearm safety. And as a result, we've got 11 rhinos signing in with the Democrats on more red flag laws. I'm looking at the bills.
Oh, those are
87-page bill.
Those are going to be so bad. People have no idea how bad that's going to fuck up the country. You're going to get your bitter, dumbass ex or some guy you work with or something just saying, I think so-and-so is going to kill themselves. Yeah. Before the red flag laws, do you have any idea how easy it was for me to articulate, all right, we're going to go over to John Burke's house at 123 Main Street. Right. We think that we have reasonable suspicion that he's a suicidal subject because his girlfriend came to us and said he's not feeling well. We know he has firearms on the premises. So we are going to treat you like a criminal. We're going to do a no-knock entry, but our knock is going to be like this, right?
Yeah.
Police department. Then we're going to kick the door in after we've articulated that for your safety. For your safety, we got a warrant, right? Mental health, you're not answering the door. We're going to seize all your guns. You're going to get evaluated. Turns out you're 100% fine. Yeah. Now you got about a year's worth of paperwork to get your own property back. Good luck.
That's already been, it's showcased in, many different points out there have been actually made in regards to that. You're 100% right. It's people can weaponize this due to a political bias. And it's funny because in this bill that has been authored by Democrats, I think John Corbin posted, and this guy's a complete fucking sellout. Like he's getting roasted, ratioed on Twitter. But in there, it's interesting because I read one portion of it that is definitely, it's putting a very finite definition on what is domestic violence. It's like, I know why they're doing this. I know why they're doing this. They're basically putting in that bill the criteria that they can utilize these red flag laws for. It defines what an actual romantic relationship consists of. We're on very, very dangerous ground here with what's being proposed by Democrats with 11 of these senators, 11 of these, and it was Lindsey Graham, McConnell, John Corbin. Actually, I've got the list right here. I was going to read this on
my Kinzinger from my state.
I don't know if I saw his name on there. I know I didn't see Crenshaw's. I was looking for it, but Crenshaw, I don't think supported it. Let me see.
People don't get the domestic violence laws are a joke. They were brought back into severity because of like the 90s, 80s, 70s, when guys would get drunk, they'd go into the drunk tank, come out that night, go home after beating their wives, then they would kill their wives. Yeah. So the courts really focused on domestic violence to protect the women. As policy in officers have discretion to arrest on anything except for domestic violence with visible injuries.
I was about to say, because it's like that's a very, very slippery slope as far as
how many women I've seen scratch themselves in their face and their arms, and you look at the guy and you're like, I know you didn't do this, and you look at her and she's a fucking insane, crazy woman, and your commander goes, got to take him. Our department had a policy. It was unwritten, but if you didn't do this, you'd hear it from the chief. If we went to a domestic battery call and it was verbal only, And people need to understand this, because you need to wake this shit up, because you think that it's only in your bigger departments, and your bigger departments don't make up most of the country. So in our department, if we went to a verbal domestic, John and Jane are fighting and there's no injury whatsoever, you took them both. You handcuffed both of them. You brought them back to the station. You called the state's attorney, screened it, and let the state's attorney make. And we always knew it. We would say, hey, you know what? There's no sign of physical injury, blah, blah, blah. Because the chief did not want the liability and lawsuit to come back to him. So we would still arrest you, 100% arrest you, and we'd pawn it off on the state. It's, again, but we also, I'm going to tell you how this is shitty. We do look around, right? So we're in your house. You're arguing. There's no physical signs of injury. We should be gone in 30 seconds. All right, great. Hey, there's your domestic package, package or information, all the shit. But we're, you know what? While myself and Commander so-and-so are talking to you two, I got one in one room, one in the other room. I got a third officer walking around. You know damn well what he's looking for.
Drugs, guns, booze.
Any fucking reason to stay. Now we're looking to sit there, and if we get anything with violence, sir, we have to secure your weapons for security. You know, then that was when there were no red flag laws. If we could articulate all of that shit then, all that red flag law, it's going to ruin people.
Well, no, when they first proposed that red flag law, I think it was in Georgia and Maryland, there was an elderly black man that was killed because he answered the door with his firearm. And officers were like, apparently his sister had filed a report. The cops went to the judge, got the warrant, and they went to go serve it, and the guy refused, and he was standing there with his gun, and they shot the motherfucker. Now it's like...
Yeah, in his property.
In his doorway, murdered him right there in cold blood, and it's like, wait a minute. It's like, hold on. It's like, this is unconstitutional, and you did this for his protection. You killed him. Yeah. And then it was again in Maryland. I forget who the actual person was. Red flag laws were already getting innocent people killed that had committed no crime. They had committed no crime. But real quick, the GOP members that actually, senators that voted for this, Blunt, Burr, Portman, Toomey, Cornyn, Tillis, Cassidy, Collins, Graham, Romney, and then Republicans who just joined to advance it, Murkowski, Capito, Ernst, McConnell, and Young.
I'm surprised Adam Kinzinger isn't on there.
I'm shocked too, actually. Maybe I don't know.
Representative. We got... I'm throwing her in there for one second. What's her name? Tammy Duckworth. She's my neighbor. She lives 6 houses down when she's in the state. She war veteran, loses her limbs, and she fucking hates cops.
Do you think like a lot of this is being done to heighten the hatred for police officers?
You know what? Yes, because again, too, and it's easy, right? By policy, they are not allowed to speak up. And right. There's a lot of different moving parts in this. Number one, a lot, not all, but more and more and more that the good ones retire and these new morons are being brought in. There's a lot of stupid law enforcement out there. This is why I don't bootlick. A couple of years ago, I did a post because I was shocked. Now I have to admit, I was part of the problem. I loved my job. I was damn fucking good at my job. I was a great cop. I didn't understand the saying, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail, until I left law enforcement and I went, holy shit, how many lives did I ruin? Lawfully, constitutionally, but how many people should I have just gone, you know what, that's really not worth it, and walked away? We actively looked for shit. Yes, we had quotas. It was a department evaluation. Every single quarter, you had to have a certain amount of points up. Those points were based on your performance. So if I need 30 points for the day, why am I going to get a misdemeanor arrest that counts for 2 points when I can look for a felony arrest for 7 points? So, hey, I'm going to stop you for speeding. You got a little baggie of weed on you. I could let you go. Oh, you've got a single oxycodone pill that's not registered to prescribed to you. I'm going to arrest you for a class 4 felony. That shit happened all the time.
Really?
We ruin people's lives all the time. That being said, you also have stupid police because we believed in the job. I got hired at 26. It was probably my second year on, because I went from afternoons to midnights, back to afternoons, a day shift. And it was my second year on, I get my first weed arrest. Like, holy shit, we can't. It's a fucking plant. Because they had villainized it and weaponized it for me for years, I was brainwashed to that.
Yeah.
So we looked at the job as we were doing God's work. Yeah. You'd be amazed. I put a survey up years ago on Facebook. I said, how many of you in law enforcement or non-law enforcement support the police officer issuing a citation based on the attitude or language of a driver? You have no idea how many cops commented. I 100%, if a person gives me an attitude on a stop, I will write them a ticket to make sure that they understand the severity of what they're doing. And I would, fucktard. You just publicly admitted you violated someone's First Amendment right, and people would argue back with me. No, it's not your job to punish. It's your job to document behavior, send it up to the courts, and let the courts decide. What did they say? They can call me a cocksucker all day long. They didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
They say no. So when you watch these First Amendment audits online, yes, a lot of these people are problems. They purposely try to poke the bear to act stupid. But the amount of stupid cops we have out there is dumb. But the amount of self-righteous ones you have who want to sit there and say, hey, listen, this is the problem, can't talk because their policies and procedures prohibit them from saying anything about the department. So cops are fucked on every level, and they're getting buried because they're allowing it to happen.
Where do you see the future going as far as what happens with Uvalde? Do you see that changing anything in regards to how policies are maybe changed in the future? For example, like saying, hey, from now on, test the fucking door handle to make sure it is actually open versus closed?
They'll Band-Aid more shit. They'll give more stuff out there, all the way from use the intercom to start trying. Do you need mental health today? They're just going to add more stuff to it because they don't address the problem. The problem is, again, too, I actually had somebody tell me years ago, we had him on our show, was about the Florida shooting where we got David Hogue from. This guy calls up, and I had no way of verifying it. He goes, dude, I live down the street. He said a couple of days beforehand, there were 6 vans, black vans on this kid's property, the shooter's property, with floodlights about 6 o'clock at night setting up for shit. It was the day before the shooting. So I don't like to go down the false flag theory because everybody and their mother wants to create everything to be a false flag. But you know, these people are on the radars. You have to step.
Well, it was documented. FBI went to the Parkland shooter's house 22 times, which, by the way, the same bill for red flag laws, $100 million going to the FBI for raises and things such as that. That's great.
You can't, until you're ready to sit there and start, castrating these people. The police are always going to be where the buck stops and the responsibility starts. It's not going to be, should we fire some of the teachers who had this kid evaluated and say, hey, he really needs to be checked into a mental health facility? Did they not push hard enough? Are they going to be sued and held accountable? Are the doctors who let these kids out and not commit them, are they going to be held accountable? It always falls right back on why didn't you do enough? So two things are going to happen. One of two things. Either you're going to get an army of drone police officers who are like, we are taking no chances and we're going to do everything we're told, or you're going to get an army of people who are like, we're not doing shit anymore.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I kind of hope that it's the latter so we can actually get this thing over with.
Well, they did come out and say that the Supreme Court had said that it's not an officer's job to protect you. They are there to freaking essentially, what was the actual verbiage being used? It was basically changed the whole dynamic of what people's perception of the police's job was, which only further emphasized the need of a Second Amendment.
Yeah, 100% it does. It also makes cops look worse because but again, how many cops are willing to stand up and say, no, we would never do that. I've never, even with every piece of shit I've ever worked with, I've never seen anyone run away from the danger. Mostly that's because they're good people who they compulsively need to serve. The other ones are just assholes who love to fight. So I've never seen anyone cower. But again, I don't know what the hell's going to happen. They got a real shitty quality candidate coming in. And don't forget, the command staff in the next several generations is being made from these poor choice candidates.
Yeah.
One of our first commanders, he got hired with our department. First 6 months, he got into a foot pursuit, broke his collarbone. He's a weak, kind of frail dude. They put him behind a desk. He spent his career in detectives. They promoted him with the gold bars. So it's like he'd never been on the street. This is what I say. This all, you want to fix law enforcement? Start going to your village hall meetings. Start talking to your mayor. Who's our police chief? What's the policy? What's this and that? Start going and having coffee with your chief. They work for you.
Yeah.
Why are you not demanding they answer to you? But it's like out here in Chicago. You're talking about domestics. I don't mean to go all over the place, but
no, you're good.
We have 3. This is the other aspect too. Why should people obey the laws anymore? Our sheriff, Tom Dart, when I ran against him in 2018, it was alleged him and his wife got into a knockdown, drag-out fight. Chicago police showed up to his house. Nothing happened. Lori Lightfoot, her and its wife got into a fight a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. Apparently, the big white woman beat the shit out of her. Nothing happened.
Jesus.
Kim Foxx, our state's attorney, second largest county in the nation, 5.8 million people. Her husband called 911. Allegedly, Kim beat the shit out of her. Nothing happened. Chicago police showed up, nothing. Why should anybody on the planet even put money on the counter for a gallon of milk anymore? Well, fuck it. I'm doing whatever I want.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna obey this traffic law. I'm going anywhere.
Yeah.
So, and then you're going to ask police to wind up stepping up to the plate and doing the job. Cops, it's not that they have the hardest job in the world. They've got the shittiest job in the world, but they also did this to themselves.
Mm. It's almost like it's a classism, elite classism thing. Like if I've got the money, if I've got the clout, the power, I can pretty much do whatever the hell I want to do. And then the cops are going to stand by and not do anything. You see that across the board. There's massive levels of corruption when it comes to the higher ups, especially politicians and the actors and stuff. It's like, you shouldn't have access to these weapons of war, but we should. Like what?
Mm-hmm.
Like how does that make you any different? How does that make you any better? And then you have people like Eric Swalwell coming out. It's like, well, the government will just use nukes. It's like, do you not think about the shit that you say? Like, do you think the government is going to use a nuke on its own people? Like,
do you imagine if you were employed somewhere and you made that statement?
Jesus. And he was banging a fucking Chinese spy and he's still there.
Again, I don't know why this country has not spoiled down into anarchy yet. I don't. It blows.
I think if things don't change, it's definitely heading that way. Because right now, with what we're seeing as far as the culture has shifted into such a negative downturn of, we're talking about drag queen story hour. The president of America, Joe Biden, comes out there and affirms that we should support transgenderism in children. We are living in insane times where you're sitting here saying, am I the only one that, like, am I crazy? Am I the crazy one here? Like, am I the only one that's not taking stupid pills, or is this now the norm that I'm just unaware of? Like, this is mind-boggling.
I wish these scientists wouldn't tease us all the time with asteroid comes 55 million miles per hour. Dude, give us one that's just going to hit right in the middle of the heartland. I keep saying, man, I'm 20 minutes from O'Hare Airport. I'm going to take out a lawn chair. I'm going to get a cigar, light that up. I'm going to crack open whatever bourbon I got, and I'm going to be please hit O'Hare. I just want to see it's like Putin. Push the button already. That's where I'm at right now. It's so stupid.
It's just crazy to see what's going on right now with the Ukraine fiasco. China's now making threats saying if we do go after Taiwan, we will go to war with the United States. You got Biden shelling out billions to Ukraine. You have red flag laws in America. And this is the other crazy part that just blows my mind. These Democrats will sit there, and a lot of Republicans will sit there and say that we should have restrictions on the Second Amendment. We already know when you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. But one just has to look at two different places. Number one, Australia. During the lockdowns, they had the camps. They forced those people into those camps. The cops were harassing and assaulting people that were literally outside their front door smoking a cigarette or drinking a cup of coffee. And then you look at Canada. When they protested Trudeau with the trucker convoy saying, we no longer want this, the people are speaking. We don't want these lockdowns. And what does he do? They freeze their bank accounts. They lock them up. They're disarming. They're trying to disarm them. It's like, this guy's a tyrant. If somebody put a bullet in Trudeau's head, it's justified at this point. It is.
Second Amendment already has limits. I don't know what people's problem.
Yeah, that's the other thing. It's we need universal background check. We have you. What are you talking about?
Not even that. I don't know how it is. You're Texas. Is that where you're at?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm in Illinois. I can't. Now, Second Amendment is my God-given right to own a firearm, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, why is it I have to have a FOID card in order to own one? Why?
It's a breach. It's unconstitutional.
The FOID card is not my permit. It's not my right. My right is the Constitution.
Yeah.
That's stupid. But people, we need more rights. But again, we're not going to talk about the 30, 40 people who were shot in the city over the weekend.
Over in Colorado, Chicago, absolutely, yeah. We're
going to see. I love it. The death toll is already 300 in Chicago for the year.
Mm-hmm.
We have 1,500 people shot. And for the month, I think we have 238 people already shot.
You know why we're not going to talk about that?
Because they're black.
There it is. That's what I was going for.
Cycle. I go off on that a lot too, where the blacks are 100% farmed for votes and prison bodies out here in the city.
Oh, I can see that. I can understand. That's also why the MSM is going to sit there and try and use them as pawns. They're going to offer them all these government subsidies as incentivizations to become proxy government employees and then manipulate and use them to say, hey, the right is racist, they're KKK, yada, yada, yada. It's like, do you not understand that the left is essentially keeping you poor, not allowing you to advance by keeping you poor, by keeping you on these subsidy program? They're essentially like government drug dealers. They're keeping you addicted to their money so they can control you. To say, hey, don't vote the other way or you lose this, forcing you to go out and get a job.
You summed it up. They don't understand. That's what happens when you have a 72% high school graduation rate for black males. You have no jobs. You pump that shit music and drugs and booze and food in their faces all day long. They literally don't understand. It's not meant to be racial. One of the things I've always talked about is with law enforcement, you want to know a big problem with Chicago? Chicago will take a suburban guy, right? Like me, right? I want to be a Chicago cop. So I'm a white suburban guy. I'm 21 years old. I move into the city. I'm going to do whatever the fuck anybody tells me because I want that Chicago PD star, right? I go into the academy. Now all of a sudden I'm influenced because I watch Chicago PD on TV or I got friends or family who are CPD and I'm white. And then I'm chomping at the bit and they stick me in a squad with a veteran on the south side of Chicago in a black neighborhood. Now, the entirety time I'm in the academy, I think I'm Rambo, and I'm watching shit online, and all we see is anybody's show is the blacks are animals. That's all we see. We see the knockout game, we see riots, we see looting. So these idiots who are getting out of the academy believe that these blacks are nothing but criminals. Now you wind up interacting with them. You ever hear the dialogue that comes out of an uneducated black teen's mouth? You cannot understand. It doesn't even sound like English. How are they going to communicate orders in a heightened state with a white kid who has no frame of reference for that culture and is afraid because he's never lived this life? They resort to violence. They resort to their guns. This is why we have such a problem with CPD as well, too, is because who the hell wants to come from that community to also go to the academy and become a cop? Because then you're a sellout.
Yeah.
So it is shitty. The whole system is fucked.
Yeah, it sounds like we have some really hard times ahead of us, man. But hey, I appreciate you coming on the podcast today. Real quick before we go, where can people find you at?
Domminick Izzo all over social media. You want us for our show? We have a show 5 nights a week. Myself and Comments and Ashley. We talk about everything from politics to pornography. You want to follow me on YouTube? I've got one of the highest ranked Wing Chun channels in the world. So if you saw the Ip Man movies and you think that's real, you can go check out Izzo Wing Chun. I wrote a book Before the Badge, Everything You Need to Know Before You Become a Cop. It's available on Amazon, and I shoot my mouth off. That's it.
Your podcast, where can they find that at?
They can find it on Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, iTunes, all that. It's The Rants of Izzo. The Rants of Izzo. And we're having you on, too.
Absolutely. Can't wait to do it, man. Hey, thank you for spending time out of your day coming on here and kind of dissecting this with me. I greatly appreciate it, man.
Thanks for letting me bitch.
Absolutely. All right, brother. You take care, and we'll have this up and posted very shortly.